Hello everybody, my name is Liam Schnell. I'm the creator of Rushing Through France, and since a lot of people have asked me how I did those transitions, I wanted to use the chance in order to show you some of my workflow, how I've sorted my files, some beforehand planning, and then I'm also going to talk a bit about the sound design. Now at first I'm going to talk about my file structure. Here you can see all the raw videos coming from the camera, and those are around 466 to be exact. And actually in the final Rushing Through France video I have only used about 70 or 75 of them, so I had to cut a lot away. One of the biggest problems was, as you can see here, the overexposure actually on the sky. Here it's kind of okay, but actually if we're going into a scene like this one, you can see there's nearly no contrast. The sky is clipping because it was very cloudy, and this just isn't a very good picture to look at actually. It's this global illumination coming from the white sky, not giving any shadows or contrast. So what I did is I made After Effects project with 100 of those videos inside, because my computer can't handle more than 100 videos in an After Effects composition. Well, it can, but that is no fun. So first I split them up and I actually edited, color graded and or stabilized and or cut each one of those videos in After Effects, and this is what I'm going to show you now. So here we are now inside of Paris 100 to 200, and I'm just going to walk you through what I've done here. You see, this is a shot of my girlfriend walking inside of our apartment building. What I basically did is I didn't even apply warp stabilizer because it was not needed here. It was all shot in 1000p with 50 frames per second. And here you can see I've added an unsharp mask of 100, which seems a lot, but because I reduced the noise before, it actually works out. If I'm taking those away, you see it's only slight difference. Here in her hair, for example, she's getting more detail, and also on those hard edges of the jacket. So I don't think that it's too much, because actually the lighting is very soft in this scene, so you can use unsharp 100. Normally I'm using 50 or 60 at maximum. And then I've done some color grading. Here I think I've just used Fuji Velvia from Film Convert, which is a great software and I can recommend it to anybody. I've shot in Cine 1 Pro on the A7S Mark II, and so basically this is what I've done with all those shots. I've just gone through them, color corrected them, stabilized them, and then I also named them. So for example, let's take another one from my girlfriend in the subway. You can see that sometimes I did a bit more. Here you see that I've actually cut the video in different parts that I like most, because there are some parts in between who weren't usable. And here you can see I also applied the warp stabilizer. It's scaling in by 6% crop, which is really okay because we were getting a great image out of it. I've used this technique where you put your camera strap around your neck, then you apply pressure on the camera, pushing it away from you, and you look like an imbecile, but actually it works pretty well and the results are stunning. So kudos to that. Here you can also see that I've added sharpening of 60, and then I've used Film Convert here once more, this time with a more natural look. I've chosen not to use any film grains so far, and also my color curves are very low. If you can see, if I pull it to 100 here, this is way too dark and contrasty and looks like a bad filter put on. So if I put this back, you see there's color coming back, the shadows are much brighter, and this is what I actually want. I don't want to go for this all washed out hipstery look, but I want there to be some contrast. And then here you can see I've masked this one out right here because this was too bright for my scene. And actually I wasn't shooting in S-Log, I was shooting in Cine 1, but you could play around in post quite a bit and bring those highlights down here without hurting them at all. So then, as you can see here, I used warp stabilizer, warp stabilizer, warp stabilizer, and then I named them with a naming convention that I came up especially for this project. It's actually pretty simple. You see those have prefixes like BT, 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 then FP, then we go to LL, then SH, and so forth. Slow. So slow, of course, 100 FPS means this is a part which is shot in slow motion, and actually this water fountain you can see right here is in the final video. And then we've got BT, which means we're going from the top to the bottom, or the other way around if you reverse it, of course. It actually is not a great shot, because you can see the sky has a pretty strange color, and it didn't end up being in the movie because I had no real use for it. But you can see here we're moving from the top to the bottom, so we're tilting down. Here I'm also zooming. Then we've got this one, which I already showed you. This is the abbreviation for my girlfriend walking in front of me. Then we've got some macro shots right here. This one wasn't in the video, although it features this very nice bee. Then we've got RLB, and this shot actually is in the final video, but you only get to see it for half a second. This means right to left and coming from black. I think this is a bad example because we're not coming from black. Let's see if I got another one here. No. Maybe. Yes, this is the reverse. So this is now LRB, not RLB. This means we're coming from the left, going to the right, and coming from black. So here I'm coming from the left, moving to the right, like this. Well, now like this. At some point I am actually going to move to the right. I just had a hard time to figure out a good angle. And coming from black means that I can take another shot where there is a black area on the right side, and I can just switch them out, and it's very easy to find your transitions this way if you have this naming convention. SH means just I'm showing around a bit, going left, right, no special movement. Here this is also in the final video. And then we've got slow motion, and we've got some shots without any prefix. Those are just, yeah, well, they just fill in the gaps if I don't need a transition, but I actually want to show something, because this video actually was all about the transitions, because I haven't had so many great shots because the weather wasn't that good. As I've shown you before, there was only one sunny day where I had some nice footage. So this basically is what I did in the very first step, and now we're going to go one step further actually. So we're now in transitions experimental, and this actually is, I think, what you want to see. It's how I chose my clips in order to do those transitions, and how I actually did those transitions. And you can see this one is called, well, it's actually a German sentence. This is my final composition with it goes all the way to the end, right here. And there are those big chunks of pre-compositions, and then you see those small adjustments layers right here, and those actually are the transitions, those adjustment layers. But I'm going to come to that in a second. So what I've done after I've done all those 500 After Effects videos, 466 to be precise, I've rendered them as a proxy in 720p, and I played around with them for quite a while. And I think for the first 10 seconds of my video, like those aren't even the first 10 seconds in the end video, but it was a sequence. And I've just started by selecting random shots, and I thought, okay, this one, those 5 shots were all shot in the same location. How could I connect them? Is there any way? And then I just played around. So I think for the first 10 seconds of those transitions, it took me about 5 or 6 hours to finally have the feeling that yes, this is how it should be. And then actually it got pretty fast. On the second day I've done like half a minute, and then on the third day I've done the remaining 1.5 minutes. Also because I wanted to get this project done. Actually, it took me a lot of time because I had some errors. Because I've set the motion tile actually too big, and if you set the effect motion tile too big, which I will show you in a second, then your computer just isn't able to render it out, because you've got a frame size of like 10,000 pixels times 10,000 pixels, and After Effects Media Encoder actually is not giving you a detailed analysis on what went wrong, so I had to go through all those 466 videos and do some research what actually crashes the media encoder, until I actually found that it was the motion tile. So you see, I'm actually going to go into one of those chunks here right now. This is called transition, and those are my like prefixes so that I know we've got transitions here. And you see lots of layers, lots of precoms. So what I did, actually those aren't video files here that you see. This actually is the imported composition from the other After Effects that I just shown you here, from the other After Effects project. So you can see here that actually I imported all of those. There are temp used files for render. So here you can see that I've actually imported all of those videos into my final composition. Takes a lot of time. It has been painfully slow while editing, but you've got the best quality because you're not using any proxy or even lossless rendered. I don't actually trust it 100%, so I just took the original compositions and put them in there. So as you can see here, this is how they are actually linked up. So we go back here, and let's just take this shot for an example. Here we've got the focus pull actually from this plane to this Space Invaders alien right over there. The quality is a quarter right now, because if we would choose full, I wouldn't be able to record anything right now. And then you see the transition here. I showed you frame by frame. It's actually we're going to the left because there's this very bright spot. We're moving to the left here. And then in this video we were actually also moving to the left for real. It's not the transitional effect. And then I'm just going to go through a few quick examples to show you how I connected shots, and then later in Premiere I can show you some more ideas. And here we're actually using the sun flare to make our image all white when we're actually zooming in there. Or not all white, but very bright. And you can see here that our last image is a very bright spot here and kind of darker spots on the right and a bit on the left. And this more or less is the first image you see here. There's this very bright spot and darker points around here. And because this is a hyperlapse that I've shot, actually my first one ever, it has only 23 frames. So it's happening so fast that you don't actually see that those shots, they match together okay, but not super well. But since by the time it is sharp, you see this bright spot here, and you're moving so fast that actually at the end I did the exact same trick. I just scaled into the bright clock of the church, and then we've got this very bright picture, and I've used it to go to the tree and the sun flare once more. So about those transitions, actually I've got them from Baker tutorials. They're called Baker Easy Transitions, and it's not a plugin, it's a preset, so you can't really say that I've got them from Baker, because those are all effects from inside of After Effects that you can also do, so you actually don't need Baker Easy Transitions, but it makes your life a lot easier, and credit where credit is due, because it actually gives you access to the motion tile, the transform, scale, rotation, X slide, Y slide, and then also rotational blur, zoom blur, and directional blur. And if you've got the plugin like I do, also you can enable real smart motion blur. And all those values, as you can see in red, they are linked together by the preset. so that you don't have to go into the graph editor and do like this ease in and ease out of those transitions, so they feel more natural. And actually what you do, I'm just going to link up the tutorial from Baker in the description, because he explains it perfectly, because he created this preset and he's got some pretty good stuff. It's around 10 minutes on how to use it, and it's very, very simple. Basically, you select the blur, you select your scale, then you take an anchor point where you want to go actually in the zooming effect. Like here, for example, in this shot, you can see that my anchor point is now set to this clock, and therefore we are going to zoom in there. If I set the anchor point here, you can see what this changes actually. We're moving around, and also so does the motion blur. So now you see there's actually this edge, but if we zoom right in here, you don't get to see it. So I'm just going to link this up, and then I'm just going to show you the final steps that I did here. So I've did around, this is around 40 seconds right here. And then in the end, I joined them all together, stacked them up, made some final transitions. And actually the first transition that I did for 5 hours is called final, because at this time I thought, yes, this is the final transition for today, which actually is this transition right here, where my girlfriend's walking, then we're going into the subway, and so on. And now I'm actually going to go into Premiere to show you some more transitions and how I planned them beforehand. And then we're also going to talk a bit about the sound design. If there are any open questions about After Effects, please write them in the comments or let me know, because this actually is my first tutorial and it doesn't really feel like a tutorial. It just feels like I'm telling you what my main idea was, and I'm going over all the things that I see here that might be helpful actually. And one last step that I've did is I took my final composition and I took it into the great preset from VashiMorphic. I'm not sure it... Yes, VashiMorphic 4K. And this actually emulates the look of the 40mm primo lens curve. So you can see it's squeezing the sides and making it a bit larger here. This isn't the best example actually. If there are people involved, you see why I'm using this. Let me find a good example very quick. You can see that the render times, even for quarter, are kinda long because I've used all those pre-coms. Well then, let's go here. This should fit. Wonderful, yeah. So I'm actually turning this to full for a second. Or maybe for 10 seconds. So you can see if I'm applying this, she gets a bit taller and the rest gets a bit squeezed. And I just kind of liked the effect. I wanted to try it out in a video. I think this looks way better and it's such a subtle effect. You need those letterboxing templates in order to hide those black spots right there, because you're actually bending the image. So if you don't want to zoom in and ruin your image quality even more, then you just gotta use those letterbox templates, which I'm using anyway. In Premiere actually, I'm not using this letterbox because I'm making a video with the composition size of only what you can see here, which is I think 190 to 800 somewhat. Now we're going to Premiere and I'm going to show you. Here we are finally in Adobe Premiere. And this is my final project. Let me scale out a bit here. This is what it looks like. Looks like a lot, really isn't actually. So you can see that I've used a pre-rendered version of my video, because I know that you can import with dynamic link an After Effects composition into here. So I could have just imported my After Effects composition, and like this, it would have been the best quality I could have get out of the source material without it rendering one time, but my computer is not able to import this huge After Effects project with more than, I think, 700 pre-compositions in the end into Adobe Premiere, and that's just okay. So I've used this video right here, and you can see that those two tracks actually, more or less, there's some down here, those are all the swooshes that I've got. And I applied a low pass filter on them so that they sound a bit better actually, because those high pass sounds, let me I could give you an example. Let's go right here, turn this mute, and we'll also mute this down here and this in advance. So this is what it sounds like with a low pass filter and without. You hear that without, it sounds more like you're swinging a stick in front of the camera and this is the air flowing, while with this low pass filter it's more of a rumbling transition. It's not so much in your face than it would be without low pass. So you can see here also a concept that I've used for my transitions. Actually, let's see what was here. Right, I've had this shot of the statue. Unfortunately, I had to change here. I'm not really happy about this because this is a transition, well, yeah, from the same statue to another point. But because here I was actually going up with the camera. So this is all real camera movement here, and then I also zoomed in into this very bright spot, followed by this very bright fountain. And then I thought, wait, I've got another shot of this fountain actually, where it occurs. So here I'm zooming out, as you can see, into this shot of the Louvre with the same fountain in below. And you can see actually from the water that it's going back in time, which also really helps. Try to experiment with mirroring your image and going back in time and using speed revamps. I've shot it all at 50 frames per second, so I've had the ability to do that in post. And you can see here, we're now moving into this very dark area of the image actually. And you see here's this structure of the Louvre, those very straight lines. And now we're actually repeating them here with those very straight lines. And you can see that due to the motion tile effect, you can see the window up here. But because we've got our black bars in the end, it's not visible. And we've got the same lines here. This of course is not right here. I think the room I'm showing you here was at some other point in the Louvre. And then I'm using this window as a gateway into the street actually. And I'm showing you the street. Here I've got the ringing noise. And you can hear a few sound effects that you don't actually get to hear in the final cut. Because it's a really creative process actually. Or not so creative as just very, very simple. You have to turn down your expectations a bit at first. Because in the end, in order to get some transitions and to get better transitions, you just have to experiment with them. And here, like, it is a very simple thought. I thought, okay, we're going from the street, like you look out of a window, you see the street, so we're going to the street. Then in the street, you maybe see a small shop. We're going to a small cafe here. Then we're actually going inside of a cafe. This is not the same place, of course. This is a whole another shot that I've took here. But I'm getting you from one point to another only by telling this very simple story actually. Now we're going into the cafe. I'm going up with my camera. This is actually in the same place. And I've got this man. And right here we've got a bright spot. So we're going there, not down the street. You can see there is this sign here and we're going down the street here. Focusing on this and then sliding to the left, using this sliding also here in this shot actually, and I'm going to show you a few of the sound effects that I put in here. You can hear wine being opened, you can hear wind chimes, you can hear pedestrians. And you can see we've got some problems here with the rendering, but that's basically it. I've just took more or less random sounds that I thought they might fit, because in the end it's the mixture of sound and a lot of sounds coming together. I could have done way more. This actually isn't too much. I think we've got around 40 sound files maybe, not taking those transitions. I think, yes, might be around 40. It's actually not much. Of course, you can do a lot more with sound design. Just watch Watchtower of Turkey, of course. I know you might think that the inspiration for this movie came from Watchtower from Turkey, but actually it did not, because Watchtower from Turkey is so much better and just on a whole nother level that I thought, okay, I'm not going to try to replicate this. I'm just going to do this transition test actually, where I'm going to replace every single transition with those zoom, scale, rotation, swish, fancy transitions. And then I thought about, okay, let's add some sound design. The idea pretty much is the same, only that he has done it masterfully and I didn't. Let me find another example of here. This is a good example of left to right coming from black, because right here I'm going down and you see this right spot here, very dark and black, and actually we're gonna transition to the right, and in this shot on the left side it's pretty dark. So this is why this transition actually works out pretty well. Then let's go here. Of course, those flower things, it's more of an inside joke, overusing this transition so much. But I really wanted to get a good pace inside the video. Here, for example, I just had no real intention while doing this transition. I knew, of course, the time-lapse is coming from this direction, so it's scaling out. And then I just thought, okay, let's zoom out here with a bit of a rotation and come from there. And of course, very important, if you see a church, add some church bells. You can see even playback is not that smooth because I'm recording right now. Everything is going nuts. Then I've used the technique of not transitioning directly to another longer scene, but using a small scene in between to transition. Here I want to transition from this outside backwards walking into, oh no, into this room right here. So pay attention to the trees and the street, because the next scene you're gonna see is actually shot on the same place, only in this darker area. So actually my girlfriend was walking right there, and I'm just using this a second, and you can see some heavy banding here because I'm on 1.4, now it's gone. And I've also used the solid right here in order to cover up the motion tile effect of this being replicated up here, and then you've got also a bright spot here, and you don't want this, so you can see actually the curve here. I've just took the color from here and I created a solid that only lasts for a few frames. And then you can see this is a very bright spot, very dark surroundings, using very bright spot and very dark surroundings coming inside from the window. Now she closes it, which is actually also in reverse because she actually opened them. And then I'm using this dark corner right here, and now I want to go into the subway, so I want to move like this. I'm zooming into the bottom of the picture, going down into the subway, showing you the subway cables only for a second, then zooming out of this very dark shot into the jacket of my girlfriend. Actually, this isn't a dark shot, but if you take a strong zoom in this jacket, the transition actually works out kind of good. And this also was the first transition that I ever made, right from here to here. And then of course I've had the subway here. Let's move into the subway and then go back up through the ceiling of the subway onto the street. And then use the same flaring effect again. Ah no, actually I'm coming here and you see this is going from the bottom to the top, coming from black. So this also kind of works with the movement of going up. In the end, it's all about matching movement in your shots. And then I'm zooming to those bright lights, which really was this funfair going here, going from wide to closer, then using a lame excuse for a very bad transition, going down to here. Now I'm doing it again, I'm going to those neon circles, and then I'm going into this very dark area here where actually the club has been, and this is how I transition. Here I've used kind of a trick because I wanted to go from here to the very bright scene of the toilet being flushed. So the second I saw this light coming up here, I thought, okay, this is where I gotta zoom in. So I'm actually zooming into this light right there, showing you the toilet, and then I'm coming back out of this over here. You can see I've actually added a glow effect for a few frames, and then I'm showing you this very short sequence by going out to the right, showing you the movement, going to the right here, and then having this transition of my girlfriend walking down the street. And I'm just going to play it through so you hear the sound effects I've added in post. Wait a second, like this. So you can see I've added some subway sounds here. Then here I've added some... This actually was the closest sound I've got to... I don't actually know how you call them in English. They're at the fun fair, the London Eye is one, but I've lost it right now. But this was the closest sound that I found to it. And you can see that I've added this electro sound only for like half a second right here. But it's those small things where you can really just get creative and put everything that you want inside of there. And if it fits, great. If it doesn't fit, you'll find another solution. Just go out and try. I took all those sounds from Freesound, I think, also from a few sound packs I had on my laptop. Here, this is the sound of a typewriter actually. Because I just thought, okay, I need a sound for this going from red to green, and it needs to be a bit of a positive sound, because red is bad and green is good, as we know. So I've just used this typewriter effect right here in order to give you the feeling. Here, actually, I'm transitioning into the bokeh here, and you can see there's some bokeh here, and it seems like a focus pull. Actually, is the After Effects lens blur effect, which really does work its magic in order to keep this transition very consistent. Going to bokeh, seeing bokeh, and then being all sharp. Let me give you one last example of a transition that I really liked. It's going from walking in front of the Eiffel Tower to a close-up of the Eiffel Tower, which I could have done better because you see there's this kind of rotation, but at some point I just wanted to finish the project more or less, because I thought, okay, I got a grip on those transitions, now I just finished the project and that's it. Now I'm going to the right for a daytime shot actually of the Eiffel Tower, and then quickly zooming out again. And you can see this is the Eiffel Tower, and I'm doing a focus pull. She's not in focus yet, and now she's more and more in focus. Now I'm transitioning to the right, and I've timed this so that her head actually, this is a mirror image, as you can see. It's mirroring here, but it's happening so fast that you think that we're going into a dark area right here, and then we're coming out of here into the church from this, and here are some dark areas. So it's this type of effect again, and then we're immediately going to the left into the dark area again, and you can see here's another dark area in order to cover this up together. And let's see it for real. This is how it looks like. And again, if you're in a church, it's like a holy rule for me that I have to use a church bell, which I did quite frequently, I think 3 times in a single video. Here I've added the sound of pigeons actually. And in the final mix, of course, it's just very subtle because we've got all the transitioning sounds here. I've got a bit of sound from the video. You can see it's turned to -5. And you can see that I've also cut the audio of the video quite sometimes because there are some bad ones and there were some sounds that I wanted to stay in the video, and this is my main track. Here I've set it out for only a few frames in order to get the music from the club actually, which is on mute, which is there now. So this is what it actually sounds like. And if we unmute this, then you get an idea of the whole sequence once more. Let's also unmute this one. This is not flute, but well, actually I'm just gonna ask you to rewatch the video if you want to hear the sound effects, because I think that in the second time you're really going to recognize them. So this actually is all that I've done in order to create Rushing Through France. I hope it helped you. It isn't as hard as it seems. And now the next real challenge is going to be, of course, to figure out when to use those transitions and to build like a small repertoire of transitions and techniques that you can use for your own filmmaking. So those transitions, they are pretty fancy, but you get bored of them pretty fast, and they are only one way in order to convince your audience of the emotions that you want to show or the story you want to tell. Thanks for watching this through. If there are any questions, ask them in the comments, and see you next time.